whole world will be your enemy.
Chase them to the ends of the world. Not a single one of them can escape.
Whatever it takes for the greater good.
Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, got another review for you. Today, we're talking about Xenoblade Chronicles 3. The review embargo just lifted for this game, and I just want to shout out our editor for the channel, Lockmort. Originally, I was planning on posting this tomorrow, but he's putting in the extra work, and he's like, let's get this out today. So if you're happy you're seeing this review today when the embargo's lifting and interest is high, it's strictly because of him. Send him your love. With that, we're talking about Xenoblade Chronicles 3. This is an important one, not because it's just another Nintendo Switch review for us, but we've talked about a ton of JRPGs on the channel. I've never had a chance to talk about Xenoblade, which is a series that I have a history of disliking quite strongly. When I played Xenoblade Chronicles 2, between the voice acting, the combat not clicking with me, the world not really synchronizing with me, and then a ton of fan service, I was just like, you know what? Not for me. I'm out. See you later. So when Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was announced, I'll be honest, I didn't really care. As the trailer started to roll out, though, I found myself quite enamored with this game. It looked more serious, mature, different. The combat looked deep. Everything they were showing me looked like they were trying to win people like me over. I was very pleased from the outside looking in. So I went, okay, the plan is let's play this game day one. eBay steps into the mix. This copy leaked online alongside many others that plenty of content creators got their hands on. So I went, you know what? Sure, let's try it out. It came. So I've put about 20 hours into it. That's nothing compared to the 130 to 150 hours I've seen other reviewers put into it, because this game has been out for reviewers for about over a month now. So I haven't had that opportunity to put that much time in. But the reason why I wanted to make a review at 20 hours is the fact that I'm 20 hours deep is significant for Xenoblade. Because, again, I strongly dislike this series. So the fact that I got past the 3-hour mark was crazy, and that I'm loving it at the 20-hour mark says a lot. So if you're new here, you're into Nintendo Switch reviews, we do review every single new release for the Switch. Also, if you're into nostalgia, retrospective content, that's the bulk of what we do here. Again, consider subscribing. With that, let's talk about Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I want to start off with the story. Of course, as always with our reviews, no spoilers, but this is what really grabbed hold of me. So, again, I have not played other Xenoblade Chronicles games to completion. I don't know how mature and serious they do get. I've heard excellent things, especially from Trails fans, because it seems like there's a connection between Falcom and Monolith, the developers of Xenoblade, where I know a lot of people have said it's one of those JRPGs you just stick with and you'll be really rewarded. However, with Xenoblade Chronicles 3, it feels like they kind of ditched that mentality. You don't have to just stick with it, bro. Then you'll like it. Off the get-go, this game is gripping. Why is that? I think it's because of the themes and the lore within the game. I find the world particularly gripping. So the general concept is that you are born to fight, and in order to live, you must fight. So when people die, you're pretty much absorbing their energy through this thing called the flame clock, and you need to feed, and if you don't, you will starve. So everyone's being born literally to fight. And the crazy part is no one lives longer than 10 years on this planet. So everyone you're seeing is born, they fight. Once they turn 10, they go through what's called a homecoming, and see you later, they're dead. And it's a world of just living and dying and fighting. And you're at the root of this mystery, trying to figure out, why is the world this way? Why can we only live 10 years? Why are we all fighting? What's the point of gaining energy? What's it all going to? And that is so particularly gripping because there's a lot of death, destruction, sadness. It's a sorrowful game to start things off. It's very serious. And one thing I really love is this game knows how to use silence really well. So during a lot of cutscenes, they'll cut the music. Normally, JRPGs are very big on themes and music just blaring constantly. And hey, as a big JRPG fan, I'm about that. But what I love about this game is the cinematics. Sometimes, like, they'll cut to a flashback and they'll cut back and they'll be like, Noah, you there? And it's like, the music just cuts. You're like, oh shit, I'm really into this right now. I just think the way they deliver these cutscenes are really good. And that's important because these cutscenes are long. These are long cutscenes, and sometimes they'll put Metal Gear Solid to shame. And I think that's an okay thing. This is a huge game. You could just tell when you're running around the world. There's some Final Fantasy 12 energy here for dang sure. What a funny time it is to just finish playing Final Fantasy 12, a massive playthrough of that, to leap into this and feel the echoes of that game within Xenoblade Chronicles 3. We'll talk about the gameplay more later, but this is a massive game, and yes, a lot of its time is spent on its story. You'll also be playing the game a ton, but do expect when you sit down that they're going to be really having you sit down and focus on this story. And what I love more than anything is this story is about war. War is one of my favorite themes in video games, and it's two sides that directly oppose each other that end up being the party that combines together. So there's a bit of uneasiness. There's not that JRPG level, we're all best friends and we're going to take on God himself together. It's like we actually kind of don't like each other, but we have to learn to accept each other because we've been thrown into similar circumstances and we share a goal. So to me, the story has really grabbed me. And I think that's important because in the early going, I think for fans who have not liked the gameplay, it is a little bit slow, but the story had me invested enough where I was willing to wait it out. That's how good the world is. That's how good the concept is. And I'm happy the way they paced it because there's a lot of mechanics in Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And as someone who considers themselves a bit of an RPG, JRPG aficionado, I've played a lot of them. I'd say I'm good at them. I'm not saying it's a flex because I think that kind of stuff is weird. But I'm just saying I'd say I'm familiar with this genre quite well. And so when I was, taking some time to really read the tutorials, come to grips with the mechanics, I think this game will not get enough credit for how fantastically paced it is. Every little introduction to new mechanics and story beats is done so well, where most times they're synchronizing these things, like something happens in the story, so it unlocks this mechanic, and it takes a moment to teach it to you, but it's done, again, in an organic way, where I feel like I've really gelled with this game compared to past ones. So yeah, the start is really strong. I have a 10-hour rule in JRPGs, which is typically I feel they fall off after 10 hours. I feel like that's when you reach the point where they've sort of introduced you to everything, and now you're starting to get into the rhythm, settle in. Okay, where are we going next? Let's go over here. And they kind of just let you play the game. One of my shining examples of the 10-hour rule in JRPGs is Tales of Hearts R on Vita. I remember the first 10 hours of that game, gritty, hardcore. Oh my God, man, I was so into it. And then it just sort of takes its foot off the gas. What I love about Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is it doesn't do that. And I think it's because while the world is very interesting, it gradually transitions into a character-driven story. And it starts to focus on the main character, Noah, who's an off-seer. An off-seer is used to send the spirits of the dead off. See you later. And grant them peace, if you will. Grant their spirits peace. And he's doing this to heroes and villains alike, and it's kind of contentious within the group, and I find Noah to be an interesting protagonist. Yes, he's a bit of a do-gooder. I do find that a little familiar, but I like that there is a reason behind that. There's a reason behind everyone's actions here. So these characters are deep, and given the length of the game, I imagine they're only going to explore it more. But that's really all I had to say on the story. Let's talk about the gameplay, because this is where I struggled. I have no doubt that, for example, Xenoblade Chronicles 1 or 2 has excellent stories, but for me, the gameplay was what really shook me off, because I've played games with stories that had really fun gameplay. It's like, okay, cool, it's a video game. I'm here to have some fun at the end of the day. And I gotta say that what they did with this gameplay is awesome. So again, coming off of Final Fantasy 12, having that understanding so immediately in the back of my mind, and then playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3, what fortunate timing for me, really, because this game does have the same target lines. It's got big and open areas. There's no loading into combat. Yes, it's very much Final Fantasy 12, but obviously as you get into it more, it's very different. But some of those elements are there, and as I've come to appreciate, if you saw that big retrospective we did on it, Final Fantasy 12, yes, that carried here into Xenoblade, bro. I was like, this reminds me of Final Fantasy 12, and that's now officially a good thing. So yeah, it's not a looker. As you're running around the world, you're going to see it's kind of looking. I know some reviewers were very big on the visuals for this game. I can't say I am. I still think the Switch is desperately in need of a pro version. It ran well, though, and to me, that's what matters possibly more. I'm used to games looking pretty bad on the Switch, but this game ran well. It ran at a higher frame rate when I was in the open world. It reminded me of Pokemon Legends Arceus, where I was like, oh, this actually runs not just well, but really well when it's docked. But in both handheld and docked, this was a good experience. It's just not going to look great. You can definitely see when you're running around the world, there's some aliasing around your main character model. You can tell there have been some major compromises made, and I'm not a PC elitist, but I would love to see this game over on PC just running maxed out. How beautiful this game could be, really take it to the next level. But yeah, when it comes to the visuals, you're not going to be blown away, but its space, its expansiveness is what is going to probably win you over as you crawl through these areas, and there's tons of secrets to find. There are different types of enemies, whether they be unique or elites, which are these bosses unto themselves, and they drop unique loot. So there's plenty of things to find out there. Other things like ether charges that you can use to unlock loot in other spots of the world, and so on and so forth. So there's worthwhile exploration here, but it's not on the level of, like, say, Bethesda Game Studios, where you're going into a house and you're finding a quest and you're tinkering with something. It's not like that level of intimacy type of exploration. It's very much about the size of the world and seeing every little corner it has to offer. One thing I noticed, though, when it came to the gameplay, I died. Wait, that was my theme. I died? Hold on now. Wait, I'm struggling. I think I'm pretty good at JRPGs, and it's not like I'm in cruise control with all these games. Many of these games demand me dialing in, but most times I have the confidence that I'm going to come out of it alive. But with Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I died a decent amount so far. I'm learning a ton of things about this combat system, and it's very new to me. So when you engage in combat, for those who don't know, there's going to be auto-attacking. And if you time your auto attacks with what's called an art, you'll do a special attack, and they're mapped to the face button. So there's some action level interactivity combined with timing, which forces you to pay attention to your auto attacks, even though it's automatically doing it for you. Because at first, again, I think people can fall into the same pitfall as, say, Final Fantasy 12, where it's, oh, it's just an auto battler, but there's much more depth to that game than I think people give credit for nowadays. Whereas with something like Xenoblade, again, you'll start the combat and it'll begin to fight for you, and you're like, oh, auto fighter. But as the game peels back the layers and continues to introduce mechanics, it is anything but. It is a demanding combat system. It's downright addictive, and it's incredibly deep. And that's because of not only its actual mechanics within combat, but it's character building. Let's start off with the actual mechanics. So I mentioned how you'll do these arts, and you can combine these arts for combos. So you can knock someone on their side, and then you can topple them, and then you can daze them, and this can be done throughout multiple moves in your party. And this will unlock a lot of bonus damage, because I don't think really any battle so far in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 has been easy. Like, I still have to dial in for every battle. And I think that's fine. I really do like that. Some people won't. Some people want to just be able to coast through some areas with combat. You can turn down the difficulty if you so desire. They allow you to do that. But for me personally, I like that there was a pretty steady challenge throughout this, and I had to learn new mechanics. It wasn't just turn-based, pick the elemental weakness, call it a day. It's like, okay, this enemy is actually going to hit us a lot. Let me switch over to someone like Uni. Let me put down a buff for evasion up. Let me switch back to Noah, who's using the Zephyr class. Let me get some evade up on him. Okay, he's not going to get hit. Let's go in with this combo now where I'm going to aggro him. Then I'm going to do a bonus aggro damage art. These types of combos, this type of strategizing is happening within every battle. And it can be overwhelming at first if you're not familiar with it, because, again, as someone who is very familiar with video games and plays a lot of these, yeah, I had some moments where I was like, whoa, I'm adjusting to this, and this is fun. But the combos, the synergy is really great. And each person in your party has a task depending on their class. So let's say you're a Zephyr. We'll use that example still. That is the class with the 2 discs that are in your hand, and you're kind of spinning them around. And if you are timing your auto attacks with arts, you're going to build up a gauge for what is Gemini Strike, one of your special arts. And so it rewards you within combat to time out things with your arts and earn a better attack. And the reason that's important is because every role has a role action. For example, the Medic Gunner, if you place a aura-based ability on the ground, your gauge will build up to a massive healing spell. So you want to really encourage that type of behavior. So there's a lot of tactics built within this game, and it pays off to actually switch between party members and really micromanage where you can. But the AI is competent enough where you can actually just rely on them to fight alongside you, and they'll do their job, and you can focus on yours, which is also great. What also happens is interlinking. Interlinking is insane. You take one of your party members and you fuse with them, and you get a whole new set of abilities, and it's this timed special mode that you can go into where you just dominate the battlefield. And this can happen at any point, and it'll gradually gain levels within combat itself. So you'll be like level 1, level 2, level 3, and then you'll unlock certain abilities within the interlinking as you're fighting. So some boss fights, which can go on for a long while, will really demand that you like settle into your role and gradually use interlinks and call your shots at the right time. So interlinking is awesome. And it's also because, again, now this ties into character building, class changing, soul trees. This type of stuff is really important. So every character in the game can play as any class effectively. So you could play as Noah, who's a sword fighter, and make him a Zephyr. You could make him a medic gunner, a tactician, what have you, whatever you want. And the reason it's rewarding to switch people's roles in combat is because eventually they'll cap out, which that cap will then increase and then you can switch back to them. But eventually they'll cap out and they'll unlock a class skill. So let's say you're using one of the defender classes that gives you a defense bonus. You'll get to level 10 with that. You'll have a class skill that gives you plus 10% defense bonus or 15%. And then you'll say, well, I want to make that defender a medic now, but I'm going to put the class skill on that gives them bonus defense so they won't die as quickly because they're going to be squishier with less health when they are a medic gunner. And then I'm going to take the accessory that gives them more health and they're going to be even beefier. So it's that little fine tuning that makes character builds so worthwhile and enjoyable. When you combine that with the soul tree, where you'll get soul points, and as you get soul points, you can spend them on a variety of abilities that are available to each of the 3 interlinks available. And the currency used to upgrade on your soul tree is not shared. So you have individual amounts of currency for each set of characters, which increases the level of progression that's there. And it's really fantastic. So after that, you can go to rest spots, and this is where you could cook. You can get little bonuses for XP or CP, your class points, for a set amount of time. Think of it like meals in Monster Hunter. You'll cook and you'll go out and you'll quest and get bonus stuff for that. You can also make gems at your campsite. Gems are great because gems are what you're going to slot into your character's abilities, again, to give them these passive bonuses like increasing block rate by 27%. And this all feeds back into the gameplay loop, as while you're out exploring, you're going to be killing enemies. They're all going to be dropping loot. You're going to be absorbing dozens upon dozens of items as you're playing around in the field. And yeah, it just all feeds into itself when you combine that with a great story. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is not only downright addicting, but absolutely fantastic. And again, this is coming from someone who, yeah, I'm 20 hours in, but I'm surprised how positive I am on this game. I've really struggled to find anything negative to say about it. Of course, do I have my long-term concerns with any JRPG, literally any JRPG I do, and that's where, you know, we'll wait and find out. But right now, early impressions are very strong. I'm here for the ride, and that's more than I could say for any other Xenoblade game. So with that, that's all I have to say on Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Let me know what you think about this in the comments down below. I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts. And with that, take great care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace out.